The story that has never been successfully refuted, even though it's now a 5-year-old story, that's clearly a deportable offense. Is there an investigation into that?
You know, I just got advised by a fraud investigator the other day on that. I asked the question, who reviewed the file, and says, there was immigration fraud involved. The statute of limitation became an issue in the last 4 years when this was first brought up.
Knowing all of that, here's Ilhan Omar on our immigration system under this president and the job that you're doing.
This is certainly not what the founding fathers of the American dream were thinking about when they said, that when they set out to write the Constitution.
What's your reaction to that?
This opening segment captures the tone of a serious inquiry into a long-standing and controversial allegation. The speaker references a claim that has circulated for years, emphasizing that it has not been definitively disproven despite its age. The discussion immediately frames the issue within a legal context, suggesting that if the allegation were true, it could qualify as a deportable offense under immigration law. The question posed is direct and investigative in nature, focusing on whether any formal inquiry has been conducted. This moment sets the stage for a broader debate about accountability, legal timelines, and how unresolved allegations are treated within public and governmental systems.
Unlike the Biden administration, we're following the Constitution. We're enforcing the law. We're not ignoring the law. And you're right. The proper, assimilation is important, and it's going to be required. Not only that, when they come here on a legal program, they're required to be self-sufficient. They have to prove they're self-sufficient. So a lot of them, first thing they're doing to get here is get on the public dole. President Trump put his foot down, and like I said earlier, we're doing a deep dive on thousands and thousands of files, and we'll hold people accountable. I'm so tired of them pulling the race card all the time,
right.
Because we're doing this racist. ICE has arrested people from 180 different...
Trump mentioning the Daily Mail reporting from 2020 that Ilhan Omar married her brother to get into the country. This was last week. Take a listen.
Look at their nation. Look how bad their nation is. It's not even a nation. It's just people walking around killing each other. They've taken billions and billions of dollars. They have a representative, Ilhan Omar, who they say married her brother. It's a fraud.
In this portion, the response introduces a layer of procedural complexity. The speaker mentions consulting a fraud investigator and raises concerns about the statute of limitations, indicating that even if wrongdoing occurred, legal constraints might prevent action. The conversation then shifts to a public statement made by Ilhan Omar regarding immigration and constitutional ideals. Her remarks are framed as a critique of current enforcement policies, suggesting they diverge from the original vision of the United States founding principles. This juxtaposition between legal technicalities and ideological critique creates a tension between law enforcement perspectives and broader political philosophy.
Calls that a fraud. It's a story that has never been successfully refuted, even though it's now a 5-year-old story. That's clearly a deportable offense. Is there an investigation into that?
I just got advised by a fraud investigator the other day on that. I asked the question, who reviewed the file, and says, there was immigration fraud involved. The statute of limitation became an issue in the last 4 years when this was first brought up. Who was president? Who ran DOJ? So pulling the records now, pulling the files, and we're looking at, but this fraud investigator, who I know personally, one of the best fraud investigators in HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, said there's no doubt he reviewed the file. So I'm running that down this week, matter of fact, and we'll see.
Here, Tom Homan presents a firm stance on immigration enforcement, contrasting current policies with those of previous administrations. He emphasizes adherence to the Constitution and the importance of enforcing existing laws rather than selectively applying them. A key theme in his argument is assimilation and self-sufficiency, asserting that immigrants entering through legal pathways are required to demonstrate independence and avoid reliance on public assistance. His tone reflects frustration with what he perceives as systemic abuse and a lack of accountability, reinforcing the idea that enforcement is a necessary component of maintaining order and fairness within the immigration system.
It's tremendous that, I mean, and according to the Secretary, Kristi Noem of DHS, she said nearly 50% of the visas are fraudulent in this community. I mean, that would mean that half the Somali refugees are here in some way illegally. What's going to happen? Is something actually going to happen? Are there going to be people stripped of their visas, deported? Are we going to see that?
Absolutely. I mean, those days are over. Thank God President Trump's in the White House. We're going to look at all of them. I mean, we're going to look at those here illegally, of course. We're going to look at those here.
This segment continues Homan's argument, highlighting large-scale reviews of immigration files and a commitment to holding individuals accountable where violations are found. He pushes back against accusations of racism, arguing that enforcement actions are not based on race, but on legal criteria. By referencing arrests involving individuals from a wide range of countries, he attempts to reinforce the notion that immigration enforcement is applied universally. The underlying message is that criticism of enforcement policies often misrepresents their intent and scope.
Under a visa or some sort of, immigration process that are criminals. We're going to look at the national security threats. But those who came through a process that weren't properly vetted, who didn't provide documentation, who slipped through the Biden's weak processes on, giving visas and temporary, whether student visas or visitors visas or whatever. We're going the whole gamut. President Trump has instructed us go down and we're going to deep dive all of this. And we're going to hold people accountable. So yes, there are going to be multiple deportations coming. Absolutely.
Which significantly escalates the tone of the discussion. He references a controversial allegation about Ilhan Omar and characterizes it as fraud. The language used is strong and politically charged, reflecting a broader pattern of rhetoric that blends policy critique with personal accusations. This moment serves as a catalyst within the conversation, amplifying the stakes and drawing attention to how high-profile figures can influence public discourse and shape narratives around sensitive issues.
There's so many claims of a racist element to this story, and when we're talking about a certain subsection of refugees into this country, but it bears reminding to people that it wasn't very long ago at all that Americans expected that people that came to our country would contribute to the cause, would assimilate.
The discussion returns to a more investigative tone. The interviewer reiterates the allegation and questions whether any formal investigation is underway. Homan responds by describing ongoing efforts to review immigration records, mentioning input from a fraud investigator who believes there is substance to the claims. However, he also acknowledges procedural hurdles, including the statute of limitations. This segment highlights the intersection of suspicion, evidence, and legal boundaries, illustrating how complex it can be to pursue historical allegations within established legal frameworks.
To our culture and to who we are. And we're just not seeing that at all in this community. We're seeing a community that's largely hostile to our culture, wants to bring in an Islamic culture into our nation, while doing so and staying vastly on the dole, on some kind of assistance, taking more than they contribute.
The conversation broadens to address systemic concerns about visa fraud and immigration enforcement. The interviewer raises claims about high rates of fraudulent visas within certain communities, prompting questions about potential consequences, such as deportations. Homan responds with a clear and assertive position, stating that enforcement efforts will be comprehensive and ongoing. He outlines priorities including identifying illegal residents, addressing criminal activity, and reviewing cases where vetting processes may have failed. The discussion also touches on cultural and societal expectations, with commentary suggesting that assimilation and contribution are essential components of the immigration system. This segment encapsulates the broader debate, combining policy, enforcement strategy, and ideological perspectives into a single, cohesive exchange. As this discussion comes to a close, it's important to step back and reflect on what we've just explored, not as a moment of division, but as an opportunity to better understand the complexities that shape modern political and social conversations. Issues surrounding immigration, law enforcement, and public leadership are rarely simple, and they often involve deeply held beliefs, legal frameworks, and emotional reactions that vary widely from person to person. What we've seen in this case is not just a clash of individuals or opinions, but a reflection of a broader national dialogue that continues to evolve with time. The intersection of policy, accountability, and public perception plays a powerful role in shaping how stories are told and understood, especially in an era where information spreads faster than ever before. It becomes essential, therefore, for viewers and audiences to approach such topics with a critical mind, seeking clarity rather than confusion, and facts rather than assumptions. Regardless of where one stands on the issues discussed, the foundation of any meaningful conversation should always be rooted in respect, lawful processes, and an understanding of due diligence. Legal systems exist to ensure fairness, and conclusions should always be based on verified outcomes rather than speculation or rhetoric. At the same time, public discourse remains a vital part of any democratic society, allowing different viewpoints to be expressed and debated openly. This balance between law and conversation is what ultimately drives progress, even when disagreements arise. Moments like these remind us that leadership, responsibility, and accountability are constantly under scrutiny, and that public trust is built not only through actions, but also through transparency and integrity. As viewers, staying informed means going beyond headlines and taking the time to truly analyze what is being presented, recognizing the difference between opinion and established fact. The responsibility does not lie solely with those in positions of power, but also with the audience consuming the information. Every perspective shared contributes to the larger narrative, and thoughtful engagement helps ensure that discussions remain constructive rather than divisive. In the end, what matters most is not just what is said, but how it is understood and interpreted by those listening. This is why continuing to ask questions, seeking reliable information, and engaging in respectful dialogue remains more important than ever. The conversation doesn't end here. It continues with you, your perspective, and your willingness to think critically about the issues that shape our world today.